welcome to my YouTube channel. Eric and I have been following each other for a very long time on Instagram, and I interviewed his ex-wife over a year ago, and he messaged me recently and wanted to be in my channel, so I'm super excited to have him on. So without further ado, Eric, how did the Jehovah's Witnesses come into your life? And if you'd like to share your story as a Jehovah's Witness.
Oh yeah, sure. I'm excited. So like a lot of your guests, I was born in from birth. Um, and the common story is, yeah, it was all I knew. So it was very influential presence in your life, kind of all-consuming presence in your life. Everything in your life really revolves around the organization. And yeah, it was all I knew. And I remember at a fairly young age going to meetings and going to the assemblies. And this was pretty early on, maybe like 11, 12. Something's always felt off about it. Something always felt off about the organization, the religion. I couldn't really put my finger on it. I couldn't really articulate why. It just felt off. And of course, this is like in the late 80s, early 90s. There was no information to like research it outside of what you were given. I couldn't like there's no internet, so I couldn't like go online and research it. I didn't have that opportunity. So just they say it's the truth, so this is what it is, and you just go ahead and do it. It was always kind of interesting for a religion that preaches itself on being so like humble and Christ-like. It's a very self-aggrandizing religion, self-aggrandizing religion. A lot of patting themselves on the back and everybody saying how great they are. I thought that was off-putting. I didn't like that. But just went through the motions. It was just something you were supposed to do. Then as a teenager and in my early 20s, I kind of just did things to just make it more palatable for me because I never liked it. I never liked the religion organization ever. I just did what I could to just kind of make it work for me. Just develop friends. It becomes your social circle. You go to the meeting, and I'm just there to like talk to my friends and figure out what we're gonna do after. That's that sort of thing. But even then, like I did get baptized in May of 2000. I was 21 years old. But even then, I think that was kind of the period of my life where I kind of took it the most seriously. I was just a baptized. I never ascended to like a ministerial servant or elder. I never got to that rank. I never wanted to. I hated field service with a passion, so I never pioneered. I just did the bare minimum. They did just keep elders off my back. Um, but I really treated it like as a job. That's really what I treated as a part-time job. That was the level of enthusiasm that I gave to the organization. Like this is just something I have to do, and I approached it like that. But I would do things like I would like hold microphones during the Sunday meetings, and I would go on building projects and help with that construction projects. So it was fun. You just kind of hang out with your friends and joke around. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. Um, but what really kind of led me to my process of leaving the organization, because I've been out for going almost 20 years now. I left in the mid 2000s. Like I think I made the decision to leave in 2005. Then I officially talked to the elders and formally gave them. Told them I was disassociating in 2006. But it was a whole process that kind of led up to that period. There was a couple things that just kind of started waking me up. I remember kind of clearly soon after September 11th, 9/11. I remember going out in field service, and we would have the little pre-service meeting with the group before you head out into the field. And I just remember some people just being like, so happy about almost like glee coming out of them because they really thought this was like the beginning of like the Great Tribulation and Armageddon. They really did. And they were happy that people were finally kind of being more responsive than normal. So we worked these territories that normally people aren't very responsive. Then when I would go out there in field service and talk to them, they were understandably very, grief-stricken, anxious, upset, fearful. And yeah, they would listen to us. They would be more amenable to kind of hearing our speech and taking the magazines and everything like that. But I remember just feeling kind of like vulture, like creepy about that. It's like we're really kind of preying on people's like fears and anxieties. And I saw how like some other my other witnesses were really like happy about that, and I just felt kind of gross. I did not like that. Um, Another thing was too, like in my early 20s, I briefly worked as in a financial agency. I was selling mortgage insurance, insurance agent. And I worked for this financial agency, and it was run by this Mormon family. They're very nice, by the way. And every like one day during the week, it was like Monday or something, that day would just be devoted to sales training. And it was funny. I remember sitting down during the sales training, and I was thinking, like, this is exactly what they teach us during the theocratic ministry school. This is exactly it. How they teach us when we do field service, like during the meetings. They would teach us, we'll come in with like a pre-planned presentation. They would teach you how to handle conversation stoppers. They'll teach you how to pivot. They'll teach you how to stay on message. And I was like, this is exactly what they teach us in theocratic ministry school. And that was one of the things that just kind of woke me up. It's like, yeah, we're just outside sales agents for this publishing company. That's kind of what we are. So that kind of freaked me out. But what really led to my departure was just my when I got married to Joanna, and that whole process. I really fell into the trap that a lot of young Jehovah's Witnesses fall into, was that they get married really, really young. Joanna was 18 when we got married. I was 24, but I was a really young 24. I was a very sheltered 24, inexperienced 24-year-old. And that process was really, really difficult. We first started within 2 months of us start officially dating. We were engaged. Within 6 months of our engagement, we were married. I wasn't ready to get married. She wasn't ready to get married. We had no idea what a marriage entails. And really what it was is we just got a ton of pressure from my family and from the congregation to get married. And this is very common. Yeah. And just the whole process leading up to that. And we did the full JW marriage. We got married in the hall. Went through the whole process. We had to talk to the elders. Then I remember the elders would constantly talk to me a lot. They pull me into the back room and counsel me and kind of talk about these things you need to work on and all this, and talk about marriage. It was just a really unpleasant experience. And to be really honest, I really didn't want to get married. I didn't really feel I was ready. I wasn't financially ready. I wasn't emotionally ready, spiritually ready. I had no idea what it took to be kind of a husband or what responsibilities were. I was just kind of rushed along into this, and I wasn't properly prepared to what I was getting into. And I think this happens a lot. They're kind of the main motivation for the pressure to get married is really only just so you don't have premarital sex and you don't get fellowship. That's really what it was. Oh, you have a girlfriend now. No, we got to get you married as quickly as possible. And that's really damaging for a lot of young families. And I've seen it with friends of mine. They find get their first boyfriend and girlfriend, and they're married within a few months later because they want to have sex, obviously. And then, 20 years later, you're kind of stuck with this person you once thought was cute. And now you're two incompatible people that are just kind of going through the motions. And you see that a lot in the kingdom halls and the congregations. I call them, at least from my experience, I call them zombie marriages, where they're on the outside, they're fully functioning couples, going to meetings, commenting, doing all this stuff, but inside they're just completely dead. I would see that a lot. But just the whole experience of the engagement, the talking with the elders, the pressure was a lot of pressure. I felt like we were constantly being scrutinized, monitored, watched during the meetings. Just trying to catch us on something, like, are we gonna, like, they're gonna catch us, and every like thing we were doing was being scrutinized, and I would just go to the meetings and I would just feel so, like, so much stress and anxiety, and just like miserable. And I'm driving to the meetings or preparing for the meetings, and I was thinking, like, are you supposed to be feeling this way when you go to the place of worship? Like, isn't like religion supposed to offer some sort of peace and comfort and solace and community? I felt none of that, like none of that. I would go there and just feel like stress and anxiety all the time. And it was, yeah, it was just a really difficult experience. I remember my first kind of time talking with the elders in the back room discussing the wedding and our marriage. And they pulled me to the back room, and I'm sitting down there with another elder sitting across, and we're waiting for the presiding overseer, the head elder. I know it's called something different now, but back then there were the presiding overseers. So I'm waiting for him to come in. And I have distinct memory, clear memory of just sitting down, and the presiding overseer walks in, and he's this large, kind of heavy set man, and he lumbers in, and he goes straight to this huge file cabinet that's in the corner with this giant padlock on it, opens up the padlock door and pulls out my file and sets it down on the table. I had no idea I even had a file. Like, I have a file? Like, what is this? And there's like this huge padlock on it. And it was just so like, I don't know, like I was getting sent to the gulag, like in Soviet Russia or something like that. They sit down my file and review it in front of me. And I was like, what is this? Like, what is going on? And I was a pretty good kid. I've never been. This was my first time. I was never like in a judicial committee. I was a really good kid. I really kept my nose clean. I really didn't do anything too crazy. I kind of just did my own thing and kept to myself. So it was really kind of my first time going through that experience. And it was like, oh, this is just, I don't want anything to do with this. I hate everything here. And I don't know if the elders could actually see the contempt on my face, because I was looking at them with the contempt. It's like, I don't like any of you. None of you are here like out of place of like compassion or try to help me. There was no kind of like encouragement or practical advice on how to be like the husband marriage. Or I received no practical advice. It was just, this is what you need to do. You need to get your hours up. You need to make sure you have a chaperone and all this other things, and make sure you guys are doing your family study and going to meetings. So that was it. So just the whole process was just awful. Then we got married, and then it got worse. But then it was really difficult. Like I said, we were really set up to fail, and this happens a lot in the organization. There's no really support for young couples. Nothing practical support. Their answer to everything is go to meetings, go to field service, personal study, family study, what have you. Just keep you busy, keep you on the hamster wheel, so you don't have time to think about your own issues, and just keep you busy. That's kind of how they their advice for anything. So Joanna and I, we were married for 4 years, and during that time, we just kind of played house during that period, and just kind of went through the motions of what you do as a married couple. But it was really difficult because we both had a lot of unresolved issues that we brought into the marriage. We slowly, it was a process. So we were married for 4 years before we got divorced. And a lot of it was just bringing our own unresolved issues and trauma into that marriage, and just really not being able to really care for the other one. And not to say that we didn't love each other. I think there was love there. I think we just only could love each other at the capacity we knew how to love at that time, if that makes any sense. We could only love at the capacity that we could at that time. So we ended up divorcing. Joanna actually initiated the divorce in 2008, I believe. And that was a really difficult period for myself. One, I was relieved because we were actually in a really dark, difficult place during our marriage. There was some sense of relief in being divorced, but also it was a really emotional time for me because it was forcing me to confront a lot of like deficiencies and issues that I had. And after the separation, that was the very first time I lived alone ever in my life. Like I went from living at home to marriage, living with Joanna, and then we divorced, and now I'm kind of by myself. And that really forced me to confront who I was as a person and really have to learn to develop my own sense of self, which is what I never had in the organization. I had no sense of self. I had no self identity. I had no idea who I was. There was a period, and soon, maybe a month or so after the divorce, I remember looking, and this sounds kind of corny, but I remember looking in the mirror, and this is me like late 20s, 29, 30 years old. I'm looking at the mirror and I'm like asking myself, literally asking myself, like, who are you? Who are you? I had no idea who I was. I didn't know what my interests were. I didn't really know what I like. I kind of had to learn to build myself up from the ground up. I really did, like at 30 years old almost. But it was a really, really good experience for me because I really learned a lot about myself during that time. And it also really kind of opened my eyes to the organization. Is just like how they really the organization itself, the macro organization as a whole, they really they don't care about the members at all, the rank and file members. They really don't care. Not to say that it's not caring, and at the local congregation level where you build bonds and friendships and everything like that, but at the macro level, the organization itself, they don't really care about the members. And kind of what made me realize that was a few months after the divorce, I'm hanging out over a buddy of mine's house, and he has some other friends over, and there were I met a young couple that had a small daughter, a really nice young couple, and I was talking to them, and they were like heavily, very Christian, and they were heavily involved with the Calvary Chapel Church. And I was like, oh, I was curious. I told him about my background. I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, and we're just kind of talking about, hey, what's your religion like? Then I would tell him about mine. Then I was just kind of talking a little bit more, and it's like, hey, how long have we been married? And he said, oh, we've been married for like about 2 years. And he just said, like, before we got married, we had to do an intensive premarital counseling with like a therapist before we were allowed to get married in the church. And that just like blew my mind. That blew my mind. I was like, what? Really? He's like, yeah, we had to sit down with a marriage counselor before we could get married for like a year. And that was just so incredible to me. That then it was through the church. It was through the church. And he was saying like, yeah, I have played the guitar. I'm in the band. And then next week I'm going on this husband excursion where all the husbands get together. We camp out in the woods and we just bond and connect. And he was like, you don't do anything like that in your church? I was like, no, there's nothing like that. Nothing. They want you, all you do is go to 3 meetings a week, field service, preach, and that's it. There's no infrastructure, there's no support for these couples. And things like that just like kind of just like this organization doesn't really care about its members. And then I kind of more realize and that they do that by design. That's intentional. And this is my opinion, but I really do believe that the lack of the reason why they reason why they discourage higher education, how they discourage you to seek outside mental health counseling, any other type of things where you could really develop a sense of self-actualization, becoming a healthy, realized person. That is not in their interest at all. They do not want that. They want you to keep you producing. The organization itself is in direct competition with other outside forces for your time, money, and resources and energy. They need that for you to go outside and to produce, to gain more members. All you are is just an unpaid sales force, outside sales force for a multinational publishing corporation. That's really what you are as a Jehovah's Witness. So all these things just opened my eyes, and like I said, then I'm kind of going back here, but yeah, just when I kind of made the decision to leave, then in 2006, that's when I had to sit down with the elders. They actually came to my house, and they were there kind of really as a shepherding call. and just kind of like get me to go back to meetings. I haven't been going to meetings for about a year at that point, and they kind of came in as a shepherding call, trying to get us to go back. And then I told them, like, I just want to let you know that I'm not going to go back to meetings, and I just want to let you know that I'm officially not want to be recognized as a Jehovah's Witness anymore. And they just couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it, and they pulled out all the tricks, the emotional manipulation, the fear mongering, all that stuff. One of the elders said, "So you're telling me if Armageddon happens tomorrow, you're going to be dead, right?" And I was like, "So be it." In that very unlikely scenario, if that's what happens, that's what happens. But it was like an hour-long conversation of just kind of having to tell them that, I'm not going to be doing this anymore. And they just couldn't believe it. One elder was like, "Okay, no, stop. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to meet with you every week, and we're going to start from whatever book they're studying in the Bible study at that time. We're going to go from chapter 1 and we're going to go to the end. I want to meet with you every week, and we'll fix this." It's like, no, it's not going to happen. It's not. I've been through the Bible studies. I've read all the books. I'm like, no, no. Then finally they kind of, got the point, and they said, "Okay, well, we're going to need you to do is we're going to need you to write a formal letter of disassociation and mail it to the Kingdom Hall." Then at that point I was like, "Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah, I'll do that. No problem." After they left, I was like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that." There's no way I'm doing that. I'm not gonna put something in writing that you can just hold over my head for eternity. And second of all, I don't owe you anything. I don't owe these people anything. You have no power. The only power that they have is the power you allow them to have, the power that you give them. They have no intrinsic power. They're just guys. They're not divine or anything. They're not speaking for God. They're just they're middle managers. They're middle managers. That's what they are. You have the corporate body, which is the governing body. You have the regional managers, which are the circuit overseers, and you have the local supervisors, which are the elders. It's a corporation. That's what it is. No. So that was it. But it was a really interesting process. Like I said, there was stops and starts. There was really stops and starts. I would go back. I would get pressure from my family, my mom. They would, every once in a while, I would kind of tell them a little bit why and not. And it's my mom. There's the typical JW family. Oh, you just kind of want to go out and do your own thing and be bad and just think, oh, he'll eventually come back. It's like, no, I'm not. I'm not going out. I'm not leaving just because I want to go out and, have a good time or whatever. No, it's not about that. It's about, I have really strong disagreement, and I don't agree with the policies and the decisions of this organization. And it's funny, I always refer to it as organization. I'll never refer to it as a religion, because it's not a religion. It's really an organization. It's a corporation. And just this religion, Watchtowers, is just a product that they're selling. That's just a product. I really refrain from calling it a religion, because I really don't think it is. But I think I mentioned in our pre-interview, what really kind of sealed that door, really kind of cemented my decision, was in, I believe it was 2013, I read Raymond Fran's Crisis of Conscience. And that was such an incredible book. It really changed my life. It was just beautifully written, and it really impacted me. And I love how he wrote it not from a place of anger, but a place of compassion and a place of understanding. He was just sharing his story, and just kind of his process of what he went through, his experience in the organization, and what led to him being disfellowshipped. And I just love the way he wrote it. It had so much empathy and like I said, compassion, and with a goal for you just to kind of understand. But once I read that, it was like, yeah, all my intuition was confirmed. It's like, it's a corporation. He pulled the curtain. He pulled back the curtain, and you saw the man behind the curtain. He took you in the back. You saw how the sausages were being made, and it's like, okay, yeah, this is what it is. Just a man-made organization run by just guys who are just making policy decisions. That's it. And one of the most alarming things is they would make these decisions that would affect the lives of millions of people. And it could be this policy decision can be enacted by a vote of 6-4 on the governing body. So 4 people agree with this, 6 people did. So they have the majority. This policy is now enacted, now is being treated as the word of God from the members. It was like, it just opens your eyes. It really does. And so, but once I read that, it was, yeah, that was it. That was it. I couldn't really go back. I not to say I've been through meetings like after that. I've been to kind of, I think I went to like Memorial after that. I went to like an assembly or something like that, but I could never really take it in because, you know, once you see the magician reveal his trick, you can't look at the trick the same way. And that's how I felt when I go back to the meetings. Yeah. And like I said, everything they're doing is very, very intentional. It's very intentional. One of the things I noticed to going back after I woke up, and I will go to like a meeting, or I will like go on YouTube's and listen to convention talks and stuff like that. Because I still like to see, I still follow JW Witness channel, XJW Witness channels like yourselves and others. Because I'm kind of curious of what's going on. And now when I hear like a convention talk, I don't know if you ever noticed, but the inflection and the tone, it has a very distinct inflection and tone of the speaker when they talk. They all sound the same. And I really believe that that's a form of like they're like hypnotizing you. You're like in a hypnotized state. And the tone they speak is very, very intentional, and it all sounds the same. And it's to put you in a hypnotized state. And I recall when I was an active witness going to the meetings, you're in this state and you're listening. But one of like the really interesting things I realized was after you hear the talk, unless you're writing notes down, after you hear the talk, you will not be able to remember anything that the speaker said. You won't. And I have people ask me that. It's like, we come back from the meeting or the assembly, somebody asked me, oh, how was the talk? It's like, oh, it was great. Oh, what did they talk about? I have no idea. I have no idea, because you're in this altered, hypnotized state. And that happened like all the time. So unless you write something down, you're not going to remember. And that's very intentional. You have to, they push you in this state. And that's why they emphasize so much on meeting attendance, personal study, family study, read the Bible, make sure you read every literature they produce, every book, every magazine that comes out. Make sure you stay on top of it. Make sure you read everything. Make sure you're going out in field service on the weekends. That's all very intentional. They have to keep you in that have to keep you in this delusion. They have to keep you in this delusion and in this state, because they realize the more you're away from it, the delusion is going to wear off. That's why they're very the whole disfellowshipping thing, and the reason why you disfellowship for going against policy or disagreement with policy, while they label that as apostate, is they have to, because that's a virus. That's a virus that's going to come in and affect the organism that's this congregation, and it can risk cancer onto the delusion. They have to get that out right away. So they have to keep you in this mass delusional state. And anything that comes out that can disrupt it, whether it's college, like therapy, yoga, meditation, whatever, no, that has to go away. Get that out of there. We have to maintain this mass delusion. So it's all very, very intentional. Yeah.
I could not agree with you more. Your explanation about everything was so spot on. So fantastic job. I'm curious about your family. I know you mentioned your mom asking if you were going to come back into the religion organization. Do you have siblings, a father that was in the organization?
No, I was raised by my single mother. I don't have a relationship with my dad. So my mom really raised me. So I'm only close to my mom's side of the family. They're all witnesses. I have one older half sister, and she's kind of had her own struggles. She's been in and out, but it's mostly my mom's side of the family that I deal with, and they're all, like I said, they're all Jehovah's Witnesses. So when me leaving, it has put a kind of a wall up against it. I'm really the only one that's kind of like left for I don't know, just for personal beliefs. Like, I don't really know where a lot of my family kind of stands with it. I have some cousins who are really heavily involved with the organization. I have some that are kind of in and out, whatever. But when I go visit my mom and my grandmother, they live together and they're both heavily involved with the organization. Sometimes they'll reach out to me, they'll talk to me or sit me down and counsel me. They'll mail me a watchtower. And I kind of told them in the past, this is my decision, and kind of respect my boundaries. I don't really talk religion when I'm with them, but they do know my opinion, and occasionally they'll kind of like push a little too far, or every once in a while I'll get like a message or text from mom urging me to go back to meetings. But after a while, I think I really had to put up a strong boundary, especially with my mom. I remember like in 4 years ago, I had to write a really long letter or email explaining to her to these issues, like why, clearly broken down, like why like I'm no longer going to meetings. And it's for clearly kind of like intellectual, like, my own personal conscience. Like I don't think it's the truth. I don't think it's not God's organization. But it's difficult. It's difficult. It's always kind of like the elephant in the room when I go visit. It's a barrier. It's a barrier between us. But that's kind of it is kind of what it is. But I know when I had my daughter, she was born in 2012. I know when she was born, I really think my mom thought I was going to go back to meetings after having my daughter. It was funny because when I had my daughter, that made my decision to not go back to meetings even stronger, because I do not want my daughter to have a childhood that I had. Absolutely not. Just being kind of restricted from everything. Just not allowed to. You're kind of restricted, withheld from so much, restricted from so much. And I want my daughter to have every opportunity that she has. Like when I was a kid, I loved sports. I love baseball. I really love baseball, and I would have loved nothing more to play like an organized baseball, whether it's little league or try out for my baseball team. Not to say I would have been a major leaguer, I wouldn't, but it's the benefits you get from playing organized sports as a kid is great. It's great. You learn how to build friendships. You learn a work ethic. You learn how to deal with adversity, coaching, and improvement. It gives you skills to prepare you for life that I didn't have. I kind of had to learn like on the fly. So I don't know. It's just something I think back, like if my daughter ever really showed interest in something, like I would do everything I can to nurture that interest. If she wanted to, ride horses, I would do everything I can to just get her to pursue that interest. And I was like, I don't know. I think you think this will come natural as a parent, but it didn't. So you're just so, yeah. There's also too, my family, they kind of have their own generational traumas, their own issues. I'm not saying this is like every Jehovah's Witness family, but my personal family, I just came from a very cold, distant family. We just kind of didn't really talk about our problems. There wasn't a whole lot of affection, a whole lot of attention, not a lot of checking in. We didn't have a lot of money. We're constantly moving. We're always on survival mode. So our thing was like, if we had, a roof over our heads, we have food, or we had electricity, the lights are on, then you're good. What do you have to complain about? There was no further like, hey, how are you feeling? Are you okay? What do you want to do? Like there was none of that. So I developed a lot of like negative coping mechanisms during my childhood that I kind of modeled from my family. When we were stressed, we were just kind of like check out and we would all go to our little separate corners, and we weren't really engaged with each other. We just kind of just stayed to ourselves, and there wasn't a lot of emotional connection. So I ended up taking that into my marriage, which was just not good. I had to do a lot of work on myself to kind of break those patterns. I had a really good therapist years ago that really helped me helped me to kind of like be more in tune with my emotions and my negative behaviors, and to break out of those habits that I saw when I was growing up. So yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing, Eric. I really appreciate you going the extra mile and talking about that, because I think that's so important. And not only the emotions weren't met at home, but as we both know, Jehovah's Witnesses are supposed to be happy people. So the other emotions besides being happy or joyous, anger and sadness is not allowed. So the
Yeah.
full range of emotions are not permitted. And that is what is needed to be a human being. So to have somebody as a therapist help you recognize your emotions and feel safe enough to feel the emotions and validate them is so important. And I'm glad that you're able to do that now that you're an adult. Um, is there anything that you feel like you missed out on this interview that you've had?
Um, I would say, like I said, this is my first time actually speaking publicly about my experience as a Jehovah's Witness, and if anybody who sees this, I hope they could kind of connect and resonate or with what I'm saying, which I hope. The only thing I kind of would say is like just trust your intuition. If something feels off, just go with that intuition. I also think that one of the things that really this is one of the things that really stuck with me when I was leaving, and this is something I actually talked to another witness once, is when somebody like asked me like, oh yeah, I'll tell you the story. So when I was still married, I went to an Easter service at this Christian church. This was when I was still married to Joanna, and she ended up like posting it on Facebook and tagging me at this Easter event at a church. And one of this very devout Jehovah's Witness woman that I grew up with and knew me as a kid, she saw the Facebook post and sent me this really kind of snarky email, Facebook message saying, how dare you be at a church, like you're committing like spiritual adultery, that sort of thing. And I remember I responded back. I was kind of annoyed, but I responding back, and I said, well, I'm just seeing what else is out there. I'm experiencing other churches. And I said, as Jehovah's Witnesses, we knock on strangers' doors and we're asking them to question their beliefs, question their parents' beliefs. Why can't we do the same thing as Jehovah's Witnesses? And she replied, there's no need to question your beliefs. We have everything all figured out. There's absolutely no need to question your beliefs. Like, wow. Completely indoctrinated. Yeah, but that's the mindset. That's a very common mindset. It's like we're knocking on strangers' doors. Hey, question your beliefs, read this. But we can't do that. I can't go to I can't read up on Islam. I can't read up on Judaism. I can't read up on Buddhism. You're not allowed to do that. Like, how do you know it's the truth? You're not allowed to read other people's materials. If it was really the truth, you would have nothing to fear. If it was really the truth, they would say, yeah, go out. Here's some books on Islam. Here's some books on Buddhism. Go see it, experience it. We have nothing to fear. If we have the truth, you're obviously going to come back. Like, what's going to happen? Like, nothing. It's to me, it's so obvious. It's so obvious that it's really is a cult. It's to keep you locked in. It's mind control and to keep your information completely funneled and curated into this managed form. They manage what you see and hear and think. It's completely managed. That's a cult. To me, it's obvious. It's so obvious. It's like if somebody knocked on your door selling vacuum cleaners, they told you had the world's greatest vacuum cleaner ever in the history of the world, and this is the only vacuum cleaner you will ever need for the rest of your life. You're just like, okay, that's interesting. Let me go on Google. Let me do some research on this vacuum cleaner. Oh no, don't do that. Don't do that. Everything that you see is negative against this vacuum cleaner is obviously from our enemies, and they're only out to destroy us and mislead you. You don't think that would be a red flag? Come on. But that's what it is. That's what it is.
That was an epic analogy. Thank you. Oh, I fucking love it. That's awesome. I think that so many people will resonate with that. I think also that sharing that story of your experience with at Easter and that
Mhm.
woman is there's so many people that are hypnotized like that and they just like throw darts at anyone that's having any kind of like curiosity or anything
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
that. So
You're
usually
you're a
the
threat to
older
their
sister.
delusion. You're a threat
Mhm,
to their delusion, and
mhm,
and they
exactly.
just get hostile. They will get hostile.
Mhm. So
If you
true.
threaten to break that, yeah.
So true. So thank you so much, Eric, again for this interview. I so appreciate it. And thank you for watching another
No, thank you.